Watercolour is one of my favourite colouring mediums to use when it comes to floral stamps, but when it came to the background, I wanted a soft wash so the watercolours from the flowers were bleeding out. This technique allows you to softly build colour around the flowers in the background before going back in to define the flowers. I'm Verity, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, why not think about subscribing so you don't miss out on my next video. The stamp set I'm using is the Altenew Sketchy Floral stamp set and has a lovely large floral branch element to it, along with some great sentiments in a clean and classic font. I'm going to stamp this onto distressed watercolour paper, and as I will be using the rough textured side of the paper, I'm using my MISTI to get a good impression. This floral image is a large floral, and although I'm using it on a 5.5 by 4.25 inch piece of paper, it could easily suit larger cards like a 5 by 7. I'm initially stamping the floral in antique linen distress oxide ink, as I want to roughly see where the design is on the background. This ink will blend in when adding the watercolour because it's reactive, but it gives you an idea of where to build the colour up. You could heat emboss this straight away, but I wanted to create the wash without any of the colour pooling up in areas around the embossing, so I'm doing it this way instead. For this card, I'm using the Altenew Watercolour 36 pan set along with a number 12 round brush. First of all, I'm just adding some clear water over the whole panel as I'm using a wet on wet technique to create the background. Next, I'm using Persian blue to drop colour into the wet clear water over the large flower and allowing the colour to bleed outside of the flower lines. I'm doing the same process with the flowers at the top of the page using the colours Ocean Waves, Dusk and Desert Night. To stop up with some of the water pooling at the edges as I hadn't taped the sheet down, I'm just using a paper towel to mop up the colour. Now I'm using my slow speed setting on my Wow heat gun to dry the panel as I want to add another layer of colour. This time I've taped the panel down to my glass mat with masking tape whilst adding the second layer of wash to the background. You can do this as many times as you want to build up the colour, or just do the one layer for a very soft and subtle wash, but make sure in between the layers you dry your panel. Once I was happy with the background, I re-stamped the image using my MISTI as I'd not removed the stamp, and then covered this with metallic platinum embossing powder before heat setting with my Wow heat gun. I then go in with more concentrated colour to colour the florals in, adding depth and dimension. I'm going to turn some music on whilst I colour. If you want to skip to where the card is assembled, head to the 12.5 minute marker. After the florals were coloured, I used jet black to colour in the branches and added some paint splatter for a little more interest. I left the card overnight sandwiched between some books to straighten the panel out and reduce the warping. The panel was trimmed down to create an 1/8 of an inch border and frame mounted onto a white card base. After this was adhered, I then realised I need to add the sentiment. To prevent ruining the card by stamping my sentiment, if I mucked it up, I used my MISTI and I placed a piece of acetate to decide the position of the sentiment. Place the acetate over the card panel, position your stamps and use your MISTI drawer to pick them up, and then stamp onto the acetate sheet with ink. The clear nature of the acetate allows you to see through to the card to determine if the sentiment looks right. If not, you can then move the acetate panel around until you're happy with the position. Then you can place the stamps back over the sentiment on the acetate, close your MISTI drawer to pick up the stamps, and then remove the acetate to then stamp your sentiment down onto the card panel. To finish the card off, I added a few Morning Dew Nuvo drops. Adding a watercolour wash to the background prior to colouring the card can add a lot of interest to the card without distracting from the main colouring of the flowers. So what's your favourite way to colour flowers? Let me know in the comments below. This card was produced as part of my design teamwork for Bumbleberry Papercrafts, an online UK/EU stockist of American stamps and dies, so make sure you check out Katrina's site. If you enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that bell icon to be notified when the next video is up. Until next time, happy crafting!